Will Rico Dowdle become an all-pro running back for the Dallas Cowboys? All that and more in this bold prediction episode of the Locked On Cowboys Podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. On today's show, Landon and I each have three bold, hot, spicy takes for the Dallas Cowboys going into the 2024 season. Landon, let's start with some backfield takes. I want to start with Rico Dowdle. My bold prediction is that I think Rico Dowdle gets 1,000 yards rushing this year. Now, we'll see about the touchdowns because I have a feeling that Zeke, it may be one of your guys that's going to gobble up some touchdowns. But I do think Rico Dowdle is going to end up at some point, maybe it's week 1, maybe it's week 5, becoming the clear-cut RB1 in Dallas. And being the RB1 in Dallas means you're going to be a 1,000-yard running back.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, depending on how hot you want to go with this take, I don't think it's too bold to think that he is running back one. Look, we spent a lot of the offseason talking about the running back room, and I think the rest of the NFL media fandom has spent a lot of the offseason talking about the Cowboys running back room. I think that I think the difference between our concern and, like, let's say the national media's concern is that I have full faith in Rico Dowdle. Like, I expect him to be running back one. It's everything around Rico Dowdle that I'm concerned about, not Rico Dowdle. So I think that that's something that's been lost in a lot of these takes about the Cowboys running back room, is that, this is Rico Dowdle is a good running back, and we're excited to see him play as running back one. I think it's his relief that's the concern. So is it a hot take that he is the running back one on this team? I don't think so. But him, getting 1,000 yards, I certainly think that that's outside a level of expectation for most folks. But I don't think it's outrageous at all, because I think that he's probably the best running back. And obviously Pollard had 1,000 yards last year in this situation. I think that the proportions of the running back touches is going to be a little bit different than it was last year. But I do think that Dowdle will end up getting the lion's share of all those touches, and I do think that he's going to have success, and 1,000 yards seems like a very reasonable goal for him.
My only concern is the injury history, which is pretty extensive, right? Like, will he be able to stay healthy over a 17-game schedule with a lot more work than he's ever gotten before? We'll see. But I think on a per-game basis, could he average 65, 70 yards rushing a game? Absolutely. I'm kind of all in on Rico Dowdle. What is your take, your bold take for this Cowboys backfield this year?
I think that KaVontae Turpin is going to get 20 carries this year. Now, I have some statistical proof to back this up a little bit. Last year, Turpin got 11 carries, and I'm pretty sure that CeeDee Lamb got another 10 carries as well. Mm-hmm. So this offense already had, running back, wide receivers as running back carries kind of built in. And obviously those attempts, combine both the jet sweep, reverse motion action running back, but also for both CeeDee Lamb and for Turpin, it included some carries as a true running back, lining up in the backfield and receiving handoffs and running a traditional wide or inside zone play. I think what we've seen in training camp so far doesn't seem to indicate that that's going to slow down. Right? Like we've seen quite a bit. I mean, quite a bit being relative to what we've seen previously of Turpin in the backfield receiving handoffs. I kind of think as the offseason has gone on, you and I have discussed the kind of need for the Cowboys to have that juice back, right? Something that can inject juice into this backfield. maybe the Cowboys' solution to a lot of this is to kind of piecemeal that together with players already on their roster that they think have some skills here. Turpin is a guy that they've started to use as a true traditional wide receiver at aspects, and we've been pointing that out throughout this training camp, and that how he's not just being used on plays in which he's the focus of the offense or he's in there to get the ball, right? He's being part of a rotation. I think that we've started to see a similar situation in the running back room where, I mean, maybe not to the situation where he's just taking reps as a running back, but we're seeing him take a step into the running back room the same way he took a step into the wide receiver room last season, right? Like more opportunities to get the ball from there. So I think it's not unreasonable to think that, especially as we go further and further without any more additions to the running back room, that Turpin is going to be a big part of creating explosive plays in the running game.
And it's going to look different, right? It's not going to be traditional handoffs out of I formation or anything like that, right? It's going to be touch
single
passes,
stuff. Yeah.
Single bash stuff, maybe screens that are like technically laterals or carries, right? But just things to get him the ball in space. They don't need to go for 50, 60 yards every time he touches the ball. Sometimes they don't even need to be a successful play, but just to get the defense thinking and being concerned about the motion and all this different stuff the Cowboys can do in the backfield. I can see it because you're talking about less than one carry. Sorry, other way. Just over one carry per game for KaVontae Turpin over a 17-game schedule. Yeah, I don't think that's hard to fathom at all.
That doesn't necessarily mean that he'll line up in the backfield every time. Again, they'll get still the traditional stuff as well. But I do think that we will see an actual uptick in him lining up, not in an I formation, but single back behind Dak and taking a handoff. I think we're going to see that, let's say 4 or 5 times this year, as well as the traditional, jet sweep, trick play stuff. So I think that getting Turpin the ball as a back, I just saw the show note, as soon as getting Turpin the ball in the backfield as a receiver as well, I think part of that is going to start with getting him the ball as a running back. And then, once you get used to that, suddenly they bust out a play where he's running a Texas route and you've got a linebacker on him. That's where things will start to really get interesting.
I'm really excited for KaVontae Turpin because it seems like each year he's really progressed as a player, not just as a returner or as a receiver, but just an overall player. We didn't see him at all. He did not take a single snap in the preseason, which to me indicates that the Cowboys are going to have a pretty big role for him right away. And rather than give Cleveland something that they can game plan for now, we're going to see it rolled out in week 1. Again, Landon, I won't be surprised. 5 touches on offense in week 1 wouldn't shock me at all.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that's exciting too, is you mentioned it. It's not, we've seen these types of players come in the NFL a lot, right? Kick returners, speed guys that maybe don't have full traditional skills as a wide receiver, running back, whatever, right? I'm glad that they're not just trying him at wide receiver and then pigeonholing him there, that they're moving him to different spots, finding ways to get him the ball instead of, can we get this fast guy to play wide receiver? Like, find ways to get him as part of the traditional, offense so that you can consistently, tap into that speed. I think that's what's really smart with him. So I think 5 touches a game, that's a great way to inject speed. If you could figure out a way to do it, special teams, receiving, handoffs, get creative with them and keep the defense guessing, just so it's another thing they have to prep for.
2 hot takes down, 4 more to go, and they only get spicier as we go on. Let's talk about Jalen Tolbert and your guy, Hunter Luepke, next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk about FanDuel before, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you today. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. Like me, I'm a Cowboy fan living in Pennsylvania. I absolutely need Sunday Ticket. I've had it for years. Absolutely love it. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. And go check out all of the lines available on FanDuel. We've got all the week 1 lines. We've got prop bets. You can go look at somebody like Jake Ferguson to go over 5.5 receiving touchdowns this year, which I absolutely love. FanDuel's got every line that you could ever imagine. Just visit FanDuel.com, download America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Every dayers, make sure that you continue to download the Locked On Cowboys podcast wherever you get your podcast. We want to tell you about the new Locked On NFL show. It's here, 2 shows every single day. First up, the madman Tyler Rowland kicks you off in the morning with a double shot of NFL espresso. Then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Add in the local Locked On experts, and you'll get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. Make the madman Tyler Rowland and the barber Tony Wiggins your second listen at the new Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Landon, why don't you give us your Hunter Luepke take? Because I know you've been just saving it for this week.
Yeah, look, I think clearly another guy whose role has evolved, right? And I think as this offense starts to take shape in this second year under Mike McCarthy, we're going to start to see some more and more of the staples that have been in his offense for years. And if you go back and you look at some of the old Green Bay offenses, one of the things that really was featured in that offense, and we started to see it a little bit more, is the fullback position. The fullback, H-back, tight end position kind of all gets used as one spot. The 11th guy on the offense, right? And McCarthy likes to use these guys in a wide variety of ways as blockers, that sort of thing. And this is one of the reasons I've been most excited to see what Luepke is going to do in this offense. And it's clear based on what we've seen, similar to with Turpin, right? On the training camp field and based on the posture of this player during the preseason, that Luepke is going to be a part of this offense, right? My bold take is that I think Hunter Luepke is going to get 50 touches this year. Okay. And I think that is a large amount of touches. And for people that kind of track this kind of thing, I think, that's probably pretty surprising. But if you go back and look at the way that McCarthy used John Kuhn, back in, the early, let's say like mid 2008 through 2012 era of the Packers, right? He was regularly getting a lot of carries. In fact, there was one season where he got almost 85 carries as a running back. And then, getting somewhere in the area of 20, just under 20 targets as a receiver a season, right? I could easily see Luepke maybe not getting that same carry number, but I think that it's not unreasonable to think that Luepke will get a heavy amount of carries in this current running back field, the way it's constructed. And then on top of that, I think as a receiver coming out of the backfield, I don't think it's unreasonable to suggest that he could get, as I'm saying it out loud, it does seem almost crazy, one catch a game. But I do think that, the way the fullback is going to be deployed in this offense, they're going to be on the field. There's going to be mismatches created. There's going to be opportunities for that 11th guy who would normally be kind of, viewed as a blocker in the formation to kind of slip out and get out wide open. And I think the one thing that we've kind of relied on, we see that Luepke he's got reliable hands for a guy that kind of slips out of the backfield, a big running back, fullback type. So I think that they're going to feature him in the offense just as a kind of change of pace guy. And as the McCarthy offense is going to evolve, obviously my belief system is that they are going to use these down roster receivers. It's not going to be just the Brandon Cooks and CeeDee Lamb show. CeeDee Lamb is going to lead the entire NFL probably in touches, or as far as targets, not touches, but targets. Yeah, that targets is no doubt. But I think the way that the rest of the Cowboys offense is going to be constructed is not a heavy number 2 or a heavy number 3 guy, but a normal kind of number 2 level target, normal wide receiver 3 target, and then a sprinkling of a whole bunch of different other guys being rotated in for different reasons to create mismatches against the defenses they're playing.
Number 1, I hope you're right. Like, I hope Hunter Luepke kind of turns into like the number 2 running back for the Cowboys, because I think it makes sense, right? If you could have him be out there on passing downs and being the pass blocker, because I think Rico Dowdle is an improved pass blocker, but I think Hunter Luepke is just a better blocker, right? And I think you would want him out there. And if he can do some of the work on third downs and short yardage, it makes sense that he could get 50 touches a game. 50 touches a game. Oh my God.
Oh, wow. That'd be amazing.
50 touches in the season.
Sign me up for that.
Yeah.
50 touches a fullback a game. That's the kind of, make football great again, guys.
But that's a bold take. My only fear is it seems like Zeke and Hunter Luepke might have the same role on this team, right? Like when you think about what they're expected to do, Zeke is a really good blocker, right? Not only just as a pass blocker, but you can use him as a lead blocker. Although I don't really anticipate the Cowboys doing that too much.
Those days are probably done.
Probably gone, right? Yeah. But he's going to be doing a lot of the short yardage, goal line stuff. And then he's an outlet as a receiver. He's not going to be running Texas routes or anything like that. The reason why I want it to happen is because I just think Luepke is more, he's bigger, and I think he's probably more explosive than Zeke at this stage of his career. So I hope it happens. I just won't be surprised if it doesn't happen until later on in the year, second half of the year, when maybe Zeke's a little bit worn down by that point.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. To me, what's bold about my take is the timeline. Not so much that because I do think, honestly, that event like next year, it won't be a bold take. I think to suggest that Luepke gets 50.
Yeah, probably not.
Probably 35 to 50 touches, right? I think that's the role that they're working him towards. If McCarthy continues to be the head coach of this team, and so I think that you're right when you were describing Luepke as a third down pass protector and all that. I was like, right now he's got to get around Zeke because that's essentially why Zeke is on the team is short yardage, pass protection.
Yep.
I think that Luepke could be better than Zeke and almost all of that. But the question of the timeline is how quickly does he take that job? And we kind of move into that role.
All right. My next bold take. I think Jalen Tolbert ends up being the wide receiver 2 for this Cowboys team. And it's a couple different reasons why. Number one, I think we're going to see Jalen Tolbert have a breakout season. We saw it at times last year. We saw him have a really good training camp, really good preseason, and the regular season stuff got better as the year went along. I don't believe Jalen Tolbert played at all in the preseason. The Cowboys basically gave him the preseason off, which suggests that he's ready for a big role. He's going into year 3. I just think in a McCarthy offense where you're going to need everybody to be able to move around because CD moves around, I think Tolbert's flexibility and versatility makes a lot of sense. On top of that, Brandon Cooks is older. He's in his 30s now, right? He's already dealing with a knee injury. I think it makes sense to scale back some of Brandon Cooks's work and not have him on the field for 60, 65, 70 snaps a game, right? Have him obviously on the field in 3 receiver sets and in high leverage situations, but try to keep him fresh by the time we get to the postseason. And that just means a lot more snaps for Jalen Tolbert and a lot more targets compared to what we saw last year.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the things that the emergence, and I'm going to get back to Tolbert, one of the things that the emergence of Jalen Brooks and Turpin and some of these down roster guys has done as it feels like you can alleviate the need to have Cooks on the field all the time, right? Yeah. Because you have guys that you can put out there reliable. And that's all because at this point, look, he had a great training camp last year. It took him a little while to kind of translate that training camp into production of the regular season. But once Jalen Tolbert got comfortable in the regular season, you started to see what he could do. And then what has he done? He's come out into this training camp and taken it up another level. There was zero doubt who the top of those non-Brandon Cooks wide receivers was. It was Tolbert every single day, consistently making plays, consistently being consistent as well, high floor and a high ceiling guy. I think this is the year that Tolbert brings that to the regular season. It does feel like the trajectories of the two players between Brandon Cooks and Tolbert are probably about to touch pretty soon, and that there will be a point in which those will cross each other. But I think the great thing about that for Cowboys fans is that Brandon Cooks' skill set is such that it can be valuable as a apportioned player, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't necessarily have to be on the field to be an effective player because of his speed, because of his veteran presence. And if the Cowboys have enough, starter level wide receivers, which it feels like they do with Brooks and then Flournoy kind of coming along as well, that, you're going to see a healthy dose of just Tolbert out there with CeeDee Lamb. And I think he's going to be able to perform.
And it makes sense, right? Like if let's say it's first down and it's 12 personnel out there, I probably want Tolbert's size when it comes to blocking on the outside. And that's when you give Brandon Cooks the opportunity to get a little bit of a breather and then come back out when it's second and long or third and long or whenever, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not predicting a huge statistical season for Tolbert because I think CeeDee is going to get so much of that and Jake Ferguson's going to eat into it. And then Brandon Cooks is obviously going to have a big role, but I'm thinking
those two receiver sets like that, there's going to be an uptick of those, like the 12 personnel sets. Why would you put Brandon Cooks out there if it's a rundown? Tolbert is more adapted for that. So because he's likely to get more of those sets by snap count, he becomes wide receiver too, because you're just not deploying Brandon Cooks as much as you're Tolbert.
I think 55 catches for 690 yards and 5 touchdowns is what I'm looking at for Jalen Tolbert. And that might not seem like huge numbers, but that's perfectly fine for a number 2 receiver in a Cowboys offense where you have CeeDee gobbling up 200 opportunities a season, then Jake Ferguson, who's obviously going to have a big role as well. I think it'll be fine.
I mean, you think another 800 plus yards, hopefully, or you hope 800 is a good target for Ferguson, right? Yeah. 700 yards for your next wide receivers. Yes, that's good. That's perfectly fine. And then again, all the other guys we talked about beyond those guys who you think are going to get somewhere in the area of 250 to maybe 300 yards. I think that's enough to have the number 1 offense in football.
As I say, it's going to be also really hard for these guys to get that many opportunities when Hunter Luepke is getting 50 carries a game, as we mentioned.
50 carries a game is really tough, man. He's going to be a tired boy at the end of this season, to say the least.
All right, we got 2 more predictions, both on the defensive side of the ball. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is what I use to buy all of my tickets. I can't go to a football game without using Gametime. They have a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events faster and even easier than ever before. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. Gametime also has the panoramic view of your seat, so you're going to know exactly what you're looking at before you buy. Plus, they have the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Gametime ticket coverage is absolutely phenomenal. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. What's something that you would love to learn? As an adult, do you make time to learn new things as often as you'd like, or was that lost in your childhood? Kids are always learning and growing, but as adults, sometimes we lose that curiosity. What's something that you would like to learn? Like gardening? Maybe it's learning how to golf, a new language, whatever it is, it can be beneficial to you. Therapy can help you reconnect with your self sense of wonder, because your back to school era can come at any age. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's done entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for any reason at no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Just visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We are finishing up here with our bold predictions, and let's go to the defensive side of the ball. What do you got, Landon?
I think we discussed a lot of angles about this defense, about the changes that have been made in this defense, and kind of tried to describe, what the Mike Zimmer's defense is and what it's going to look like. One of the things that, has been talked about the Zimmer defense since before we've even discussed it, is the usage of the double A gap, pressures, right? Like they like to attack the A gap with the linebackers, confuse the quarterback, make them have to think about where the linebackers are coming and whether they're dropping, and kind of think their hots and how do they escape that. Part of, I think, the kind of secondary results of this, is the secondary outcomes, is opportunities for interior defensive linemen to get free runners at the quarterback, right? Because of this defense, you're confusing the center, you're confusing the quarterback. There's often two linebackers coming. There's only so many people in the middle to block the people that are coming, right? And so sometimes the most dangerous, when you're thinking about pass protection rules, right? Like a lot of times they block from the inside out, right? The most dangerous player needs to be the primary focus of the protection, right? And that's usually the guy coming through the A gap at 100 miles an hour, especially if it's Micah Parsons, right?
Yeah.
So the kind of result of that is, and the kind of chess game that happens there is, more pressure, putting a running back in the A gap to block the linebacker. All of that is to say, there's a lot more attention in that A gap than what's going on in that B gap. And that's where Osa lives, right? In the B gap. And if he can find a way to take advantage of the chaos that's being created next to him, on the opposite side that he's used to, right? He's used to it happening on the outside of him. Now on the inside, if the chaos is being created by the peppering linebackers and that sort of thing, he should be able to get a lot more free, clear runs to the quarterback. And considering what he does well, right? Like, and that's win quickly and then close on quarterbacks. I think there's going to be more opportunity for him to get the normal kind of sack count that we've expected from him in the 6 to 8 range, which I think is fair for a guy of his ilk. And then the opportunity for like 2 or 3 more kind of cleanup sacks or free runner opportunities because of what's being created by the Mike Zimmer defense. All this is a long way to saying I think it's possible that he could get to double-digit sacks, especially in a contract year. That would be really great for Osa. But I think for the Cowboys, it would be fantastic to get back to a situation, which I think is Jason Hatcher, the last defensive tackle who got 10 sacks for this team.
Probably.
So it may be. So I think it's a bold prediction, but it's based on some X's and O's stuff that I'm hoping kind of comes to fruition.
So I'm changing mine on the fly here because you made a compelling argument. I was going to make a Martian Nealon that he finishes second in sacks. But I think you make a good point, which is why my bold prediction is that DeMarvion Overshown finishes second on the team in sacks. Because you're right. Like, they're going to blitz these linebackers a lot. And Overshown's speed, quickness, and he's really flexible. Mm-hmm. And I just have a feeling he's going to be able to kind of bend around some of these guards and centers and get to the quarterback. And then once he's there, he tackles really, really well. I think he's going to be a phenomenal blitzer in Mike Zimmer's defense. I'm going to pick him to finish second on this team in sacks. Maybe some of them are some cleanup sacks, but his athleticism, I think it's just a perfect fit for Zim. And I expect the Cowboys to use him a lot as a blitzer early on.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it would be hard to believe that both of our 2 predictions would come true, but I certainly think it's fair to think that one of these 2 likely will come true, because I think they can't maybe exist in the same world, but I think they're both based on the same sort of idea of what the Zimmer defense is going to create for the middle of this defense players, and the opportunities that they're going to have to get a chance to get free pathways to the quarterback, in the confusion that's going to be created by all the schemes in this Mike Zimmer defense.
I can't wait to see Zim's defense like in action. I don't know if you saw this article that came out about him talking about his time with the Vikings and how, let's say, upset he is with the way it finished. It seems like Zimmer is really excited about this opportunity to show the rest of the league that they messed up. I can't wait to see what it looks like in Cleveland in week 1. We'll get you ready for that game. We've got a crossover show coming on Thursday. Landon, you and I are going to do our preview on Friday. It's a lot of fun. I can't believe we're already here.
We're here, baby. We've done it. We made it, guys. We made it.
Go download the Locked On Cowboys podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Same thing for the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day, one with Tyler Rowland, one with Tony Wiggins. It's absolutely fantastic. Make it your second listen every single day, wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube. Go follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you right back here on Wednesday.